I woke up to a miracle today. Triggers fade as I find my way. No judgment to lead astray. In this peaceful state I'll stay.
Welcome to A Course in Miracles in Practice.
Today we're beginning an exploration of Lesson 328.
It's a lesson with a title that really stops you in your tracks. I choose the second place to gain the first.
And this lesson truly forces us to look at our deepest motivations.
It asks us to examine what we think of as first place, things like total autonomy, personal control, our own independence.
And then it shows us, quite directly, that the pursuit of those very things is what leads to sickness and isolation.
So we're really looking at why our separate identity, the ego, fights so hard against letting go of that control.
And how surrendering that tight grip, that stance, is actually the path to immediate peace.
Our mission in this exploration is really to get to the bottom of this idea of an imagined private will.
We want to see what happens both practically in our lives and on a deeper level when we choose to release that demanding, isolated way of being.
What you'll find is that letting go of the need to handle everything alone opens you up to a shared will.
A will that is fundamentally safety, strength, and perfect peace.
If you'd like to reach us with any questions or your own insights, you can always email us.
The address is acim@theworldharmonyproject.org. You can also find us on social media at The World Harmony Project.
Before we unpack these ideas, let's hear the lesson itself. It really provides the foundation for our entire discussion today.
Lesson 328, I choose the second place to gain the first. What seems to be the second place is first, for all things we perceive are upside down until we listen to the voice for God. It seems that we will gain autonomy, but by our striving to be separate, and that our independence from the rest of God's creation is the way in which salvation is obtained. Yet all we find is sickness, suffering, and loss and death. This is not what our Father wills for us, nor is there any second to his will. To join with his is but to find our own, and since our will is his, it is to him that we must go to recognize our will.
There is no will but yours. And I'm glad that nothing I imagine contradicts what you would have me be. It is your will that I be wholly safe, eternally at peace. And happily I share that will which you, my Father, gave as part of me. The lesson opens by laying out this fundamental paradox of the human experience.
It's this idea that we're conditioned to believe striving for independence is not just a good idea, but that it's mandatory.
Right, that it's essential for survival, for success. We feel this compulsion to be the sole author of our own story.
Exactly. And yet the lesson is so unflinching about the result of that. It says the striving, this constant push for separation, leads directly to suffering.
Straight to isolation, not the peace we thought we were earning with all that hard work.
It's a terrible bargain we keep making, isn't it? Trading this sense of momentary control for a state of perpetual internal strain.
That strain is so common, it's so pervasive that we stop noticing it.
We become so accustomed to the suffering, to the sheer mental effort of maintaining that constant control, that we just mistake it for normal life.
We even start to see it as a good thing, as proof that we're being productive or dedicated or that we're trying hard enough.
That tension of running everything by yourself just becomes the background noise of your entire existence.
And this whole impulse is profoundly reinforced by our culture.
It is. Our culture absolutely celebrates the ideal of this self-made person, the one who overcame everything through sheer separate will.
Just think about the whole hustle culture phenomenon, or that constant message that your success depends entirely on your personal grit.
That idea of pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps.
And that cultural narrative creates this massive internal resistance to doing something as simple as asking for help.
Or even more than that, just admitting to yourself that you don't have all the answers, that you don't have complete control over every outcome.
For the separate identity, for the ego, uncertainty isn't just an inconvenience. It feels like a deep personal failure.
So if you choose to stop fighting or to stop striving so hard, the ego immediately sees that as total surrender.
It equates letting go with giving up your personal safety, your power. So we cling to this idea that our separate, independent will is the only path to happiness and autonomy.
But the lesson argues the complete opposite. It says when you stand in that separate, striving position, you're constantly bracing yourself.
Bracing for the next attack, the next failure, the next thing to go wrong.
And that need to brace yourself comes from a very deep fear, a belief that if you step back, you'll lose everything.
You'll lose your credibility, your momentum, your control over the one little area you thought you had secured.
It's a posture of defense against a world you perceive as hostile.
So the promises of independence, that feeling of absolute control, security, of self-worth, get replaced.
Replaced by perpetual tension, anxiety, by this feeling of being on the defensive.
You end up spending energy protecting a position of separateness.
And that is precisely why the lesson is so blunt about it. It offers a very clear, very direct correction to this entire system of thought.
It states that our perception of control, our perception of separation, is completely backwards.
It is, in the lesson's own words, upside down.
And that's really the core insight here. Insisting on that independent will, which to us looks like securing first place in our life, only brings the very things we're trying to escape.
Sickness, suffering, loss, and death.
Why those specific words?
Because the belief in separation demands constant work. You have to work to maintain the illusion of being a separate, fragmented piece of reality.
And that work, that resistance to what's actually true, shows up as tension in the body, as physical illness.
As emotional loss, and that ultimate feeling of spiritual disconnection, which the Course calls death.
I find that connection between confusing safety with separation so fascinating. That's the real trap, isn't it?
It absolutely is. We think we cannot possibly be safe unless we are completely separate and in charge.
And that single misunderstanding is the source of all the conflict we ever experience.
The lesson isn't asking us to lose our ability to function or to make decisions in the world.
It's only asking us to drop the fear that drives all those actions and decisions.
That fear is constantly screaming, I must control this outcome to survive.
And the lesson shows us that we not only survive, but we thrive by letting go of that scream.
The moment we choose independence as our only way of operating, we instantly cut ourselves off from the source of our real strength.
Which is the shared will we read about in the prayer section of the lesson. We choose loneliness, but we call it strength.
And the ego perceives this separation as its ultimate triumph, the great victory of the self. But in truth, it's the source of all our weakness.
It cuts us off from the unity that is our actual reality. This moves us right into discussing the paradox itself. Choosing the second place to gain the first.
And the Course is using the language of first and second place, of ranking.
Intentional, right?
It does this masterfully. It speaks directly to the mind in the state it's currently in. It recognizes that the ego is fixated on striving and competing
And with winning.
Using this competitive language completely inverts the criteria for success.
It says what you're calling winning, that separation, that autonomy, that control is actually losing.
And what you're labeling as surrender, trust, letting go, that's the true path to a gain so great you can't even imagine it.
So let's be very clear about what second place actually means in this context.
It's defined as an active, conscious choice to step back.
It's the action of surrender, of letting go of that desperate, fear-based claim to a separate will that thinks it has to direct everything in your life.
It means releasing the fear-based identity itself. That identity is rooted in the belief that we're small, vulnerable,
And therefore must micromanage every single detail of our lives just to feel a little bit safe.
It's that burdensome belief system we're being asked to just set down.
And it is so critical to emphasize this part. This letting go does not require you to lose your personality or your uniqueness.
Or your practical ability to function effectively in the world. It only removes the underlying fear that makes all of that functioning so miserable. The fear-based attachment to the outcome is the source of all the pressure, all the tension, and the chronic defensiveness we were talking about.
So dropping the attachment removes the fear and the pressure.
Then first place is the result.
It is the immediate experience of alignment with God's will, which is nothing other than complete safety, total peace, and inherent strength.
And this alignment, this true win, is gained by choosing what the ego sees as failure, as surrender, as second place.
The lesson confirms this so beautifully. It says, to join with his is but to find our own.
It reminds us that our true will is already his will. It's unified, it's changeless. We are not making a sacrifice.
We are simply finding what was always ours, what was just hidden under this mountain of fear-based striving.
The ultimate gain, the true first place, is realizing your security does not depend on your constant separate effort.
It depends on your inherent nature as part of that shared will. The true success is unshakable peace, not total control.
But this is where we hit that conceptual hurdle that can stop so many of us.
Right. If, as the Course states, there is only one will, the unified will of God, how can we possibly choose to surrender?
The very phrase, I choose, implies there's a choice between two existing things, two wills, one ours and one God's, suggesting some kind of competition.
If the will is singular, if it's unified, then what exactly is the us that's doing the choosing?
And what is the nature of this separate will we're supposedly choosing to drop?
This requires us to look at the very mechanism of choice and the illusion that there are two things to choose between.
We have to clarify that relationship between will and choice. Will is absolute, it's unified, it represents reality itself.
Choice, on the other hand, is the function of the mind, which is currently entertaining the illusion of separation. Imagine you're watching a movie.
You get completely absorbed by the story.
Tears, as if the story were happening directly to you.
You are totally absorbed. You believe in the reality of the character's suffering, and you're feeling the full emotional weight of that fiction in your own body.
This whole experience is the mind absorbed in the illusion.
And suddenly, you catch yourself. This shift is the moment of recognition. It's the correction.
Now, when that recognition happens, it's very tempting to think of it as two separate parts of yourself.
A lost self that was reacting to the movie, and a wise self that stepped in and corrected the mistake. A dualistic model.
But the key insight from the analogy is that this is a complete misconception of what's happening.
It was not two separate minds competing for control. It was one single mind that experienced both things.
It experienced the absorption in the illusion, and it experienced the correction, the recognition of reality.
The mind simply shifted its focus. It was temporarily absorbed in a fictional story.
And then it returned to the memory of its true state, which was always the reality outside the movie screen. Peace, safety, security.
In applying this to the concept of will, we can state with confidence that there are never two separate wills within us.
The single mind can only experience one reality, one will.
The ego's separate will is simply the mind's mistaken interpretation of itself. It's the fictional narrative it is currently absorbed in. The mind can believe with incredible intensity that it has a separate will, a will for fear, for control, for separation.
But that belief, no matter how strongly it's held, does not make that separate will real. It's just the mind reacting to the fictional story of autonomy.
Therefore, the choice the lesson talks about, choosing the second place, is the mind's shift of focus.
It's that moment when the mind says, I will stop watching this fictional movie of separation and fear.
And it returns to the truth of its inherent nature, which is shared will.
This clarity helps us define surrender in a completely new way.
Choice belongs to the mind. It's the functional mechanism for directing our attention. But will belongs to God as the unified ultimate reality.
Surrender, then, is not one will yielding to another in a hierarchy.
It's simply an act of dropping a false idea.
Choosing second place is the mind letting go of the will it only imagined it had.
And recalling the true will that has always belonged to it, it's an internal correction, the single mind returning to its senses.
And this realization that your will is shared doesn't diminish you as a person or make you less effective.
On the contrary. And that peaceful, corrected mind is now the one making decisions, operating from a place of clarity and strength, completely free from the fear of being separate.
Now we need to bridge this powerful metaphysical truth to our daily lives.
The concept that you share the one true will needs a grounded, active translation for the moments we actually live through.
Absolutely. The practical version of this is recognizing that there's a deeper part of you that wants peace more than it wants conflict.
It wants peace more than it wants to be right, and far more than it wants to be in control.
And that deeper, true part of you is the part you are choosing from when you select second place.
And we should always remember this is not an instant, one-time thing.
We learn this at our own pace, through repeated practice in small daily moments of choosing peace over the chaos of control.
Let's use a very common scenario that really brings out the need for extreme control.
Planning an important high-stakes event. It could be a major project at work, a difficult family negotiation.
Or the logistics of a large social gathering.
In all of these scenarios, the dynamic of needing absolute control is identical.
So let's isolate the specific thoughts that represent the ego's imagined will in action during a time like that.
The internal monologue sounds something like this. I need everything about this event to unfold my way without a single problem, because any failure reflects on my worth.
That is the voice of the separate will dictating the outcome.
And it insists further. Success depends entirely on me and my efforts. I'm the only one who can push this through and make it work. Otherwise, it fails completely.
And maybe the most isolating thought of all, if I don't constantly push and micromanage every detail, everything will fall apart, and that will prove I'm not capable or worthy of being safe.
This is the separate will demanding total responsibility for the success of the universe.
So the person operating from that stance is in a constant state of demanding control. They are carrying a tremendous weight.
And the internal feeling is one of chronic isolation, of physical tension, of being perpetually on edge because the perceived stakes are absolute.
The opportunity for the shift, the opening, comes when that person pauses.
Maybe they feel the tension in their shoulders or the tightness in their stomach. They notice just how aggressively they've been trying to arrange everything to meet some imagined standard of perfection.
The moment they choose to let that rigid, demanding stance go to, say, I will prioritize my peace over this perceived perfection and outcome, that is the choice of second place.
They are choosing the single true will over the fictional exhausting will.
And this choice isn't passive resignation. It's an active, powerful redirection of the mind away from the movie of fear and back to the reality of peace.
And the immediate internal effect can be profound. The racing thoughts just stop.
Or the moment is suddenly relieved of that unbearable pressure of being personally responsible for universal success.
This distinction is crucial. You're not stopping the task or abandoning your function.
You're stopping the mind's attachment to the task's outcome as proof of your self-worth. That's the fear-based narrative you're setting aside.
Once the mind has chosen second place, the observable outcomes in the real world change completely.
The person can now make decisions with clarity because the frantic, fear-driven demand to control every single variable has been removed.
They stop micromanaging others. They can actually allow people to help without critiquing or undermining their efforts.
They recognize help as assistance, not as a threat to their own required control.
Suggestions from others can be heard and considered without the ego feeling immediately threatened or defensive.
You're no longer viewing external input as an attack on your own separate required perfection.
And the tasks themselves get handled at a non-frantic, calmer pace.
The individual's internal stopwatch, the one that was previously counting down to inevitable failure, is just set aside. The pressure is off.
Most importantly, the individual remembers that their self-worth and their safety are independent of the event's perfection.
Their value is secure, regardless of whether the final product is flawless or has a few minor bumps. That realization is the fundamental gain.
And that realization is the first place.
Knowing your peace does not depend on the perfection of an external event means the mind can stop its exhausting cycle of rehearsing worst-case scenarios.
You're no longer waiting anxiously for the other shoe to fall, which is a mental state that comes directly from the ego's belief that tragedy is always just around the corner if you relinquish control.
That constant hypervigilant state of readiness just dissolves.
Your caring for the event continues because your function remains, but your peace is no longer tied to a pitch-perfect result.
The entire process, even working with other people, can actually be enjoyed. It turns a burden into a shared, pleasant experience.
In choosing second place, you have let go of the heavy imagined will and returned to the light, true will you share.
Recognizing that your safety is already secure and was never dependent on your independent striving in the first place.
And this choice, this shift, applies anytime you feel that internal urge to push, to protect, or to prove.
These moments of internal tension are the daily opportunities the lesson gives us for practice.
Consider when you start criticizing yourself harshly. That self-attack is the voice of the imagined will demanding an impossible separate standard of perfection.
That is the exact moment to choose second place, to let go of the internal prosecutor demanding that you be perfect right now.
Or when worry starts to rise, gripping your mind with detailed projections of future catastrophe.
You choose second place by consciously relinquishing the heavy burden of needing to forecast and solve problems that don't even exist yet, handing that over to the shared will.
When you feel that intense urge to judge another person, to categorize them as wrong or less than,
that judgment is based entirely on your own separate standard of how things should be. Choosing second place means letting go of the need for them to conform to your private rule book.
when you feel yourself pushing too hard to prove something to others, your intelligence, your competence, your dedication,
You're operating from the imagined will of separation, which believes your worth isn't inherent. Choosing second place means stopping the effort to prove what's already true.
and finally, when you're protecting your position in a disagreement, needing to be right at the expense of harmony.
You're prioritizing the illusion of your independent will over the shared will of peace.
All these seemingly small daily moments are identical chances to choose the true first place.
This exploration of Lesson 328 has really focused on the mechanics of letting go.
We've seen how the separate identity believes it has a private will that must dictate every aspect of life.
And how unbelievably heavy it feels when we rely on that isolated, fragile stance.
We've confirmed that letting go of this demanding idea, setting aside the imagined, fear-based will, is what the Course means by the mental redirection of choosing second place.
It's an internal correction that changes the entire experience of life from a burden to a blessing.
And when we stop defending that private will, we immediately uncover the will we already share.
That shared will, which is peace, safety, and joy, is the first place the lesson invites us to recognize and embrace.
We've connected this concept to very real, grounded moments, the times you try to manage everything alone.
Or when you're convinced that your peace and your self-worth depend on achieving some kind of external, flawless perfection. The tension in those moments is the invitation.
Thank you for joining us today in this exploration.
We always appreciate hearing how these concepts appear and shift in your own life. You can reach us anytime at ACIM@theworldharmonyproject.org or find us at the World Harmony Project on social media.
We look forward to practicing the recognition of the one true will with you again tomorrow.